Ethan Carter, a 25-year-old taxi driver, had always believed in hard work and kindness, though life had been far from easy for him. Since leaving high school, his dreams of college were put on hold to care for his ailing parents and younger sister. For 5 long years, Ethan had been driving, hoping that one day his life would take a different turn. But each year passed with the same routine, and with every passing day, the weight of responsibility grew heavier. Despite his challenges, Ethan found solace in his work. The stories of the people who stepped into his taxi often provided him with brief moments of connection. He liked knowing that, for a short while, he was a part of their lives, even if only during the time it took to get from point A to point B. One evening, as the rain poured heavily, Ethan parked near a local grocery store, hoping to find some late-night customers. It was a slow evening. Few people ventured out in such weather. As he sat in his taxi, the rhythmic patter of raindrops on the roof began to lull him into a state of quiet reflection. That was when he saw her. An elderly woman, hunched slightly from the weight of several grocery bags, emerged from the store. She struggled to keep her balance, her frail arms barely able to hold onto the bags as they slipped and swayed in the rain. Without thinking twice, Ethan dashed from his taxi, running to the woman's side. "Let me help you with those, ma'am," he said gently, taking the bags from her hands. The woman, surprised but grateful, looked up at him with a warm smile. "Oh, bless you, my son. I didn't know how I was going to manage on my own." "You're welcome," Ethan smiled. "Can I help you to your car?" She chuckled softly. "I didn't bring a car, dear. I was hoping to catch a taxi home." Ethan's smile widened. "Well, you're in luck. I'm a taxi driver myself. Why don't I give you a ride?" "Oh, that's wonderful." The woman beamed. "I'm Margaret, by the way." "Ethan," he replied as he led her to the taxi and began loading her bags into the trunk. Once inside, he turned to her. "Where are we headed, Margaret?" She gave him her address, and as he started driving, they fell into an easy conversation. "I lost my husband years ago," Margaret shared, her voice soft but steady. "My children live far away now, so it's just me. I try to manage, but days like this." She glanced at the rain-streaked window. "Well, they remind me how alone I am." Ethan nodded, empathy in his eyes. "I know what that's like. My parents are sick, and I've been working as a taxi driver to help support them. I had dreams of going to college, but sometimes life has other plans, you know?" Margaret gave him a sympathetic look. "Oh, Ethan, you're a good son. Your parents are lucky to have you." They arrived at her house sooner than Ethan expected. As he parked, he quickly got out to retrieve her groceries and carry them to her doorstep. "Thank you so much, Ethan," Margaret said as they stood at her door. "Wait, how much do I owe you for the ride?" Ethan shook his head, smiling warmly. "Don't worry about it. Consider this one on the house. You remind me a lot of my mother, and I just enjoyed our conversation." Margaret looked at him, taken aback. "But you need this money, don't you?" "I insist. Let me pay you." "Really, Margaret, it's fine. I couldn't take money from you. You've been wonderful company." Ethan smiled one last time and turned to leave. "Well, at least let me make you a cup of coffee before you go," Margaret offered. I wish I could, but I really need to get back to work. Maybe another time? Margaret smiled softly, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. All right, Ethan. But promise you'll come by for that coffee one day? I promise, Ethan said, waving goodbye as he returned to his taxi. The next few days passed as usual for Ethan, with the memory of Margaret fading into the background. His routine kept him busy, and new passengers filled his time. But then, one morning, while cleaning his taxi, something caught his eye, a white envelope sitting on the passenger seat. What's this? Ethan muttered to himself as he opened the envelope. Inside was a thick stack of cash, more than $10,000, and a small note. His hands trembled as he read the message, to Ethan, the man with a heart of gold. I hope this gift changes your life in a good way. From Margaret. Ethan's eyes widened in shock. Margaret? No, she couldn't have, he whispered. Without wasting a second, Ethan jumped into his taxi and drove straight to Margaret's house. He remembered the way and arrived within minutes. Knocking on the door, he waited, heart pounding. The door opened, and Margaret greeted him with a wide smile. Ethan! What a pleasant surprise! Come in, come in! Ethan held up the envelope. Margaret, did you leave this in my taxi? She chuckled lightly. I don't know what you're talking about, dear. Come on, Margaret, Ethan said, stepping inside. This note has your name on it. I know it was you. Margaret motioned for him to sit at the table. Let's have some breakfast and talk about it. Ethan sat down, still holding the envelope. I can't accept this. It's too much. You barely know me. Margaret placed a cup of tea in front of him and sat down across the table. Ethan, sometimes the kindest acts come from those we barely know. You helped me without asking for anything in return. This is my way of showing my gratitude. But why me? Ethan asked, his voice soft with disbelief. I'm just a taxi driver trying to get by. Margaret smiled warmly, her eyes twinkling. Exactly. You're a young man who's been selfless, taking care of your family when you could have focused on yourself. You've shown me kindness, and now I want to help you in return. You need this money more than I do, and I trust it'll help lighten your load. Ethan looked down at the envelope, his eyes filling with tears. I don't know how to thank you, Margaret. This means more to me than you'll ever know. You've already thanked me by being the wonderful person you are, Margaret said, reaching across the table to pat his hand. From that day forward, Ethan and Margaret formed a close bond. He visited her regularly, and they shared countless conversations over cups of coffee. Margaret's generosity allowed Ethan to pay off some debts, take better care of his parents, and even enroll in college part-time. As time passed, Ethan never forgot the lesson Margaret had taught him. Her act of kindness not only changed his life, but it also inspired him to help others in the same way. Every time he picked up a new passenger, he remembered her words and paid it forward, one ride at a time. The end.